There are some geographic and geologic features on Earth that are simply too large to be truly appreciated from the ground. A place that looks like a perfectly flat, monochromatic wasteland from the ground can be a natural tapestry of rock from above. Some features are so big they can't even be seen in entirety from a plane cruising miles up in the air. To experience the true majesty of these places, you would have to view them from space. However, I would be very surprised if anybody watching this video has access to a rocket ship that they can use solely to look at geographic features. Because of that, these magnificent features would be impossible for normal people to see if not for one of the greatest and most entertaining tools to ever exist, Google Earth. With Google Earth, anyone with an internet connection can see these incredible features that previously would have only been visible to astronauts or, in our current era, the ultra-wealthy. In this video, I will be highlighting the 10 most impressive places that can only be fully seen and explored on Google Earth. And number 1 on this list is something on Google Earth that even astronauts in space can't see. To start off, we are going to check out the northern slope of Alaska, which is covered in thousands of lakes and dozens of rivers that combine to form a complex and spectacular mosaic when viewed from above. Now I know some of you might be saying, Landon, you can see this landscape from a plane. What are you talking about? You don't have to be on Google Earth. And while that is true, you can see a decent chunk of this area from a plane. It certainly isn't the full view. Google Earth has this great feature that tells you what elevation the camera is at. In other words, you can put the camera at the exact height of a plane to see pretty accurately what the view would look like up there. Now, most passenger aircraft fly at a max elevation of around 7.5 miles or 12 kilometers up in the sky. Looking at the northern coast of Alaska from that level, you can see hundreds of lakes stretch off into the distance. But this is simply not the entire picture. This region of lakes stretches east to west over 360 miles and covers an area of over 22,000 square miles. That is nearly the size of West Virginia. Basically, seeing the entire area at once is not possible from a plane, and it also doesn't give you the great top-down 2D look that you can get on Google Earth. For that, you would have to be over 100 kilometers in the sky. From the ground, this area looks like a vast expanse of flat tundra, pretty much wherever you are. Here is the view from Prudhoe Bay, and here is the view over 200 miles away in Wainwright. It is crazy how identical these look. But on Google Earth, we can see the full picture, as well as some of the finer details when we zoom in, like the areas affected by frost wedging, which creates these geometric patterns in the ground. We can see the fine patterns of the meandering braided rivers and the different colors of the lakes. And we can also see the strange fact that nearly every lake is pointing in the same direction. Now, a reason for a lot of these features is because this entire area is a thermokarst landscape. This term defines an area that is dominated by the thawing of permafrost, which is ground that normally stays frozen year-round. When the permafrost begins to thaw, the soil loses volume and collapses down, where the water can then pool into these many lakes. They don't drain very well because the ground below them is still frozen. The lakes can then grow as the surrounding banks continue to thaw, destabilize, and collapse into the lakes. While the reason for the similar orientation of them is still debated, it is likely because of either the very gradual downward slope, causing the bank erosion to occur at a faster rate on one side, or prevailing winds of this area causing increased erosion on one side across all of these lakes. Either way, it's a pretty odd pattern to see over this large of an area. Next up is the mysterious Eye of the Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara is a giant eroded geologic dome that sits among one of the largest oceans of sand in the Western Sahara Desert. Because of this, it looks frighteningly like a godly eye peering up from the boundless Sahara Desert. So, how was this structure formed? First, an igneous intrusion deformed sedimentary rock layers by pushing them up into a dome from below. Erosion then stepped in and eroded the dome, nearly level with the base of the desert, leaving only small rings of rock ridges to show what once was. The structure is over 25 miles in diameter. Since the eye is located in one of the harshest and most desolate places on Earth, it is pretty difficult to get there on the ground. But if you were to somehow make it, all you would see is some rocky hills surrounded by miles of orange sand. You may be able to vaguely tell that the rocky hills are curving, making a large ring. From a plane, you can see the eroded dome quite well, and it is honestly a haunting view. I cannot imagine what the first pilot to fly over this area thought when they looked down only to see the Earth staring back up at them. However, you cannot see the eye of the Sahara's full context until you zoom out on Google Earth. Only then can you appreciate the ridiculousness of a geologic eye among the largest hot desert on Earth. Only then can you make out the sea of sand that surrounds the eye, the context that makes it such a powerful sight. Sitting among an expansive area still untamed by humankind, the eye of the Sahara brings a mystic quality that nothing else on Earth can match. Now we head to a much more hospitable place on Earth, eastern Washington. Here we can easily see that there is a pattern to this landscape. There are large areas of farmland, and then there are these dark channels that run across the eastern half of the state. The dark paths are flood channels, remnants of some of the largest floods to ever occur on Earth, the Missoula floods. The cataclysmic Missoula floods occurred during the last ice age, when an ice dam that blocked the Clark Fork River repeatedly ruptured and released glacial Lake Missoula, which held an amount of water equal to that of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario combined. And all at once, it raced across eastern Washington at speeds up to 80 miles per hour. The floodwaters destroyed everything in their path and scraped the land clean of its soil, leaving the dark basalt that dominates the Columbia Plateau exposed to the surface. The floodwaters carved many famous features, such as coulees, which are deep canyons that now run dry, or only hold tiny streams that cannot possibly justify the formation of the large canyons they sit in. There is also the famous Dry Falls, which is the remnant of the largest freshwater waterfall to ever exist on Earth. Now, a lot of these cool geologic features are visible from the ground, and the channeled scablands are a fun place to explore because of that. From a plane, you can begin to see the wider context of the now dry channels that braid together like that of a braided river in Alaska. And on Google Earth, when you zoom out to include all of eastern Washington, you can see the entirety of the destruction of the Missoula floods. You can see the exact paths the floodwaters took to reach the ocean. Only then can you begin to comprehend the true magnitude of such an event. It's also fun to zoom in and see how farmers have cultivated every bit of soil that was spared by the floods. It's a great example of how ancient geologic events greatly influence spatial patterns of our current geography. Once you understand the history behind the view, it is a frightening reminder of the power of water and how quickly it can erase everything in its path. Next up are the Belcher Islands of northern Canada. I think you can instantly see why I wanted to talk about this place. It is by far the weirdest looking set of islands I have ever seen. They look like they're made of paint that was thrown at a wall. They sit separated from the rest of the world in the middle of the Hudson Bay and barely rise out of the ocean. They are made out of incredibly old metasedimentary rock that have been folded and deformed immensely over their time here on Earth. The oldest among these rock layers is over 2 billion years old. Recently, they were held under and scoured by the immense Laurentide ice sheet during the last ice age. Once this ice sheet receded, the islands were able to rise out of the ocean due to isostatic rebound. This is when the land surface literally rises in elevation after the incredible weight of ice is removed from the surface, allowing the crust to lift to its original position before the ice. That isostatic rebound resulted in these ancient, twisted rock layers to just barely break the surface of the ocean and sit at this perfect point where the water still fills in many of the low points, which highlights the crazy folds in the rock layers. On the surface of the island, you would have absolutely no idea of the geologic craziness you were standing upon. It would just look like a patch of rocky tundra in the middle of an ocean. From the air, you would be able to see the wild patterns quite well, but I think they are best enjoyed in a two-dimensional view on Google Earth. This way you can see the full islands and also zoom in to see the relationship of the water and the rock layers. Based on what you guys see on my channel, you might assume that I spend all of my time outside hiking in the wilderness. And while you'd be mostly right, I actually spend a lot of time on the internet as well. And just like it's important for me to stay safe outside while I'm exploring, it's important for me to stay safe online. That's where the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, comes in. With Threat Protection Pro, NordVPN helps me stay safe from scams, malware, phishing, all that bad stuff. I'm often doing research for my videos in public places like this one. And while I'm doing that, I'm connecting to the public Wi-Fi. That's really risky to do because of something called the man-in-the-middle attack, where a hacker sitting right over there could impersonate the public network, and then after I accidentally connect to it, they could steal my data. But with NordVPN, I just don't have to worry about that, so I can safely keep researching the geology of the Snake River Plain here in a local coffee shop on public Wi-Fi. So if you want to start protecting yourself online, click my link in the description, use my code TOPOTRAVELER, and you'll get a big discount on the 2-year plan with 4 months extra for free. It's totally risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So make sure to click that link and stay safe online, guys. It's scary out there. Time to go from the far north to the far south. This is what I like to call the Eye of Australia. This geologic feature is a product of pure cosmic chance. The outside of this eye is made up of sedimentary mountain ranges that were uplifted around 450 to 300 million years ago during the Alice Springs orogeny. They happened to form this nice basin, and a meteorite just happened to strike right in the middle of this basin around 142 million years ago. The original crater of this impact is mostly eroded away, but the uplift structure that occurs from a large impact is still present. This massive cosmic coincidence has created yet another desert structure that looks frighteningly like an eye. The mountains are the outside of the eye, and the impact structure is the pupil. This area is actually an amazing place to explore in person, as the region holds several national parks, impressive geology, and a lot of pristine outback. From a plane, you would be able to see the eye pretty well, although some of the mountain ranges might fade into the horizon. On Google Earth, you can see the entire eye and its place among the vast empty center of Australia. It's just wild to me that this meteorite could have struck anywhere in Australia, where there are very few mountain ranges, and it would just be a crater amongst miles and miles of barren outback. But no, it just had to strike right in the middle of a basin between some of the largest mountains on the entire continent. At number 5, I have what I would describe as one of the most artistic landscapes on Earth, Iran's Great Salt Desert, also known as the Kavir Desert. This place is wild. It looks like a tapestry of finely drawn layers, complete with another menacing desert eye. I seriously want a satellite image of this place as art to put on my wall. So why does this desert look so weird? Well, it's because of salt. There's a very thick layer of salt here that was created by the evaporation of an ancient ocean. And the thing is, salt acts really weird when it is buried by denser rock. It actually begins to form intrusions that push up through the overlying layers, like an air bubble rising through water. This is because of salt's low density. It seems weird when it takes place over millions of years in rock, but this is just physics. The rising salt creates salt domes that deform the overlying layers, just like with the Eye of the Sahara. And just like with the Eye of the Sahara, these domes leave behind beautiful cylindrical patterns when they are eroded flat. There are also some salt domes out here that haven't been eroded flat yet, and we can see what they look like beforehand. However, there are more complex dynamics going on out here, because there are a lot more than just circular dome patterns. There's places like this, where there are domes, and then patterns in between the domes, or ripples in this ring structure, or rings intersecting with perfectly straight lines. It is just an infinitely complex landscape that I have spent hours looking at. From the ground, it looks like a whole lot of nothing. this might be one of the most empty street views that I've ever seen. From a plane, you would definitely begin to see a lot of the weirdness, but just bits and pieces of it at a time. On Google Earth, we can see the entire geologic painting, which is over 13,000 square miles in area. But I think it's far more entertaining to zoom in and marvel at all of the wacky patterns. This is why Google Earth is so great. You aren't just stuck at one elevation to observe a place from. As long as the imagery is good, you can have this big picture view, and then you can zoom in as much as you want and put the camera at any angle that you want. I highly recommend checking out this area for yourself. I was not able to show nearly all of it in this video. I have been obsessed with it for the last couple weeks since I found it, and I think some of you guys might be obsessed with it too after this video. If there is one place that can rival the Sahara and Great Australian deserts, it is the empty quarter of Arabia. This is the largest ocean of sand on Earth, which is known as an erg. Yes, it is even larger than any of the vast sand fields of the Sahara. A lot of the Sahara is actually very mountainous and rocky, contrary to what some people might imagine. Anyway, the empty quarter of Arabia, known locally as the Rub al-Khali, is over 250,000 square miles in area. This is larger than the entire country of France. I think people often underestimate the size of the Arabian Peninsula because of the Mercator projection, which is what people most commonly think of as the standard world map. This map heavily misconstrues area and makes the Arabian Peninsula seem smaller than Greenland, when in reality, it is much larger. So just to hammer this home, here is the entire state of California sitting healthily within the empty quarter, which, just as a reminder, is literally only sand dunes and gravel flats. From the ground, I think you can guess what the view would look like. Endless sand. Depending on the exact spot, you might see some salt or gravel flats between the sand dunes. Not many people actually make it into the interior of the empty quarter, as this place is just utterly inhospitable. The only settlements are on the outer edges of the erg. From a plane, you just wouldn't be able to tell the full size of the empty quarter, although it might make you think that we live on an Earth dominated by oceans of sand instead of water. On Google Earth, you have to zoom way out to see the entire desert. From this view, you might begin to notice large patterns, like the dunes that get larger and more red on the western side. I really don't think anyone but the people who have been to the empty quarter will be able to truly comprehend its size. At least I know I can't. There have been some expeditions into this region over the last decade, and I admire those brave enough to attempt that feat. For now, at least, I'm going to stick to looking at this magnificent place here on Google Earth and imagining the feeling I would get from looking out on an entire world of sand. At number 3, I have what is probably my favorite geologic feature on Earth, the Rocky Mountain Trench. This is a 1,000-mile-long valley that stretches all the way from the US-Canada border to the northern border of British Columbia. This massive trench is possible due to geologic faulting. It is actually split into two sections, a northern half and a southern half. The northern section is characterized by a strike-slip fault, like the famous San Andreas Fault. The strike-slip fault here is a right lateral, meaning that the west side is moving north. The southern section of the Rocky Mountain Trench is much more pronounced, and this half is created by normal faulting, resulting from extensional forces. This is very similar to the valleys and mountain ranges of the Great Basin, where crustal spreading is also creating downdropped valleys from normal faults between tall mountain ranges. Once this faulting occurred, glaciers and rivers helped erode the trench much wider and deeper. It separates the geologically distinct Canadian Rockies from the Columbia and Interior Mountains. The Canadian Rockies are largely made up of sedimentary rock, and the Columbia Mountains are largely made up of igneous and metamorphic rock. This means the trench is a geologic barrier that makes it very easy to tell where the Canadian Rockies change into the Columbia Mountains, which many people often assume are part of the Rockies. I've had the privilege of driving through the trench, and it was quite a surreal experience. One moment, Martha and I were deep within the dense Columbia Mountains, and then all of a sudden we were in this expansive valley that suddenly made the world feel much larger. I obviously could not tell the true scale of the trench while I was there. The trench is actually an important navigation tool for aviators, as it pretty much points in the same direction for its entirety. From a plane, though, you are still not even close to seeing the entire trench. Once you zoom out on Google Earth to see the entire province of British Columbia, you can finally see the entire Rocky Mountain Trench. Now that I've learned about it, it is always the first thing that draws my eye when I open up Google Earth. The interesting geology and geography of the trench easily make it my favorite geologic feature, and I hope to get back up there and make a full video about it in the future. So far, everything has been a product of geologic processes. Whether it's a geologic dome, catastrophic flood channels, or geologic faulting, the largest features on Earth are created by the non-living Earth. Well, there is a geographic feature that rivals them all, that was built by life, namely coral, the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. This place is fundamentally alive, which is why I think it's one of the coolest possible things that you can see from space. The Great Barrier Reef is over 1,400 miles long, longer than the Rocky Mountain Trench, and 133,000 square miles in area. Here is California again for scale. It is a collective system of over 2,900 individual reefs, each of which holds an incredible amount of biodiversity. From the ground, or in the water, it is simply impossible to comprehend the scale of the system. I have personal experience with this, as I was lucky enough to spend 2 weeks on Heron Island in the southern section of the Great Barrier Reef. While I was on the island, all I could see was the surrounding reef and the ocean all the way to the horizon. When I was in the water, I remember being astounded by the fact that I was surrounded by more life than I have ever experienced. Millions of fish, hundreds of sharks and rays, and an infinite, complex coral reef. And yet, all I was seeing was a very small portion of a single reef, which is only one of dozens in a larger section, which is only one of thousands across the entire Great Barrier Reef. All of that to say, from the ocean level, you absolutely cannot comprehend the entirety of the Great Barrier Reef, no matter how hard you try. I actually made a whole video on my trip to the Great Barrier Reef, and I think the algorithm kind of hid it from a lot of my subscribers, so if you missed that one, make sure to check it out after this video. It's one of my favorites. From a plane, you can finally see whole individual reefs, but the true context would extend far beyond the horizon. Depending on the lighting, you might not be able to see very well into the water, especially when compared to Google Earth. On Google Earth, you can zoom all the way out and finally see the entire system that is the Great Barrier Reef. However, I do think the most interesting thing you can do is zoom in and check out all the fun shapes and patterns the reefs create. This also allows you to see the anatomy of individual reefs very well, with the lagoon in the center, the inner reef, the reef crest, the outer reef, and then ocean channel. It is an unbelievable place, and Google Earth does a great job of allowing us to peer into the water and see details of one of the greatest ecological systems on Earth. It is now time for number 1, which is something that you literally can only see on Google Earth. You can't see it in person, and you definitely can't see it from space. I'll give you a hint. You're looking at it right now. It is, of course, ocean topography. The trenches, the ocean ridges, the faults, the seamounts. I absolutely love that Google Earth has made it so we can see the topography and depth of the ocean floor with great accuracy, which is something that you just can't see from space. All you get to see from there is a flat expanse of blue. I think it's amazing that they have done this with Google Earth because it makes it so much easier to visualize and understand plate tectonics. You can see how mountain ranges and volcanoes on the surface coincide with deep ocean trenches. You can see where tectonic plate boundaries are in the ocean. You can see the ancient and eroded submerged volcanoes of Hawaii, allowing us to visualize the changing direction of the Pacific plate relative to the hotspot. You can see the ocean shelves and how they differ between places like Florida versus the Pacific Northwest coast. The one drawback is when you zoom in, the accuracy takes a pretty steep drop off because we just haven't mapped much of the ocean in great detail. This results in high resolution tracks running through giant blurry sections where you can totally tell that a boat just went in a straight line and only got good data for that small track. However, when you zoom out, the detail is still pretty good. It makes this a whole lot more understandable. And it's just plain cool that we can open up our computers and view the mid-Atlantic ridge in three-dimensional context with the surrounding continents. It certainly makes the Pacific Ocean a whole lot more interesting to look at too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go check out the video I made in the Great Barrier Reef. I really love that one, and you can click on it right here. Thank you to my Patreon members for supporting me, and thank you guys for watching.